So in this segment, we're going to be discussing the Tories getting smoked in the by-elections, just like they've smoked the economy. So the UK is in technical recession after people cut spending. So the BBC, some genius at the BBC has just got a name. Yeah, Faisal Islam put his name to this. Embarrassing, Faisal. Embarrassing. I mean, people spending less, the doctor strikes, and the fall in school attendance have dragged the UK into recession. Now, I wonder which one was the primary cause. Which one was the one, do you think, out of these three that dragged the UK into recession? I reckon it's the first one, but I'm not an economist. The economy shrank by a larger than expected 0.3% between October and December, after it had contracted between July and September. So you've got two periods, I think, of negative growth, which puts us in recession. The UK is in recession if it fails to grow for two successive quarters. That will do it. So that's Q3 and 4. The figures raise questions over whether Sunak has met his pledge to grow the economy, which obviously he hasn't if the economy shrunk. The government has never publicly said what measures it should use, because that's why you make vague promises. So yeah, we are in recession. You got this one from Dr. Khan, made me laugh. How the Tories drove Britain into recession, despite the Telegraph, I think this is, claiming how worklessness and school truancy drove Britain into recession. Imagine being a country, right, where school truancy can drive you into recession. That's wild. I've never heard of a country being dragged into recession because kids didn't go to school. That's madness. You've got a Tory MP being laughed at over this.
But people have got to now get behind Rishi Sunak, who actually inherited a difficult set of circumstances, and say, yes, he has turned the economy round. That is turning round now. When you talk about inflation...
Just gone into recession? No. The UK's just gone into a recession.
Yeah, OK. Those figures were from the end of last year. And you...
Yes, because we only get the figures. We get the figures in arrears. We've only just got the Q4 figures. And we're I think most of the way through Q1. That's how it works. That's how the statistics are done. This is so dumb.
Right, it was a technical recession, and it's a shallow recession.
It is technically a shallow recession, but we are still in recession. It's nothing you celebrate over. It doesn't make sense. This from the BBC.
The UK is in officially a recession because in the last 6 months of the year, the economy shrank. There were 3 months between July and September where it went down just a small bit. 0.1% was the percentage that the economy shrank. But the statistics we've just had...
This is stuff we cover. They do speak to an economist. He just spawns in off screen.
I want to bring in an expert on some of this stuff. Chris Breen, morning to you, Chris, an economist from the Centre for Economic and Business Research. Chris, put this in a bit of context for us.
People during the live stream were saying he looks like he's 12, and I don't appreciate that.
It is a recession, but how bad is it?
Yeah, thank you very much. You're right that it is now a recession, and today's data was slightly worse than we expected. But we do think that actually this will be the end of the recession. Remember, this is backwards-looking data. It's looking at the last few months of 2023.
So we could be out of it already?
I think, yeah, most economists and we think that we are already out of that recession. And if you look at the sort of, 0.1, 0.3%, this is a very shallow recession.
I think that is true, but the problem is Q4 is meant to be a good period purely because of the amount of Christmas spending and spending during the holidays. So for the UK to shrink by 0.3% is very alarming, actually. I did want to touch on the by-election as well. We'll just combine it into one video, just make my life easier, which is the Tories getting smoked in these by-elections. You can see huge swings to Labour, 45 and 44% respectively, swinging towards Labour. The only real concern I have is that the turnout is very low. So that's normal during a by-election. You can see kind of Labour have increased their votes in Wellingborough by around 100. So, I think... I'm not sure how much of the Labour base actually turned out, but again, by-elections are low turnout because you're only really changing one MP, whereas in a general, you have a chance to change a lot more, obviously all of the MPs, which is why I think more people generally turn out. And obviously here you've got more kind of protest vote options like Nick the Flying Brick, this scumbag. I don't know much about anyone else, to be honest with you. The thing I did find interesting was the Lib Dem vote, I think, collapsed. They lost 3.2% of the vote share, and I think maybe those people voted for Labour instead. I'm not sure how to... You'd have to do a lot of polling, like good polling, to know what actually happened here. or polling, as some people say for some reason, but I think the word is polling. But yeah, what you can see here is obviously the Conservative vote completely collapsing. Peter Bone winning 32,000 votes in 2019, whereas the Tory candidate only won around 7,000, which is crazy. You know, the drop off is huge. So it's not just about looking at percentages. You got to look at, I think, the raw numbers as well. And Labour did increase their actual vote by around 100, which isn't, I think, that dramatic. But I think that's the relatively good result. Considering, you know, it's a by-election, things like that. The one that did concern me a bit was the Kingswood one, because this one's bizarre. You got here, you know, Labour had 16,000 votes in 2019, and they only managed to get 11,000 votes in 2024, which is strange. I think it means maybe more of the Labour vote base just didn't turn out in this one. You had turnout was around half, so you know, very, very low turnout in this election. But, you know, you can see again the Conservative vote collapsing really by almost 20,000 votes. Reform, of course, eating into it. But again, like, you know, the argument of, well, if you add the Reform vote to the Tory vote, the Tories would have won. But if they were going to vote Tory, they would have done that anyways. I think they would have just stayed home. And I think that's one of the fundamental problems. Like, if the Tories are genuinely reading into the result like that, like these Tory voters will just come around. I just don't fundamentally see that happening.
Terrified of us.
This is Richard Ticey, the guy, when they asked him about his NHS reforms, couldn't answer anything.
Because we've got the policies that make sense, that bluntly will save Britain, and they realise that...
Can't mention any of his policies, no?
You know, they've had their opportunity, they've blown it, they've messed up the economy, they've allowed mass immigration, they're obsessed with net zero, the Labour Party is the same. So no, people are actually voting positively, saying, thank heavens, there's someone who's arrived on the scene.
I think you're just a protest vote, big man, I'll be honest. You're a rebound. That's all you are. And we go on to the GOAT, Sir John Curtis.
Confirmed that the Conservatives are still in deep, deep electoral trouble. The 21-point drop in their support in Kingswood is in line with the 19-20-point drop that they're currently suffering in the opinion polls. The 37 to 38-point drop in Wellingborough is actually the biggest Tory loss the Conservatives have ever managed to suffer in a post-war by-election. Now, it may well be that the circumstances surrounding Peter Bone's downfall and his replacement by his partner perhaps added to the...
That was weird. Replacing Peter Bone with his partner was weird.
Party's woes in Wellingborough. But there is no gainsaying the fact that this morning we are still looking at a government that at the moment is staring defeat in the face at the next general election.
Yeah, I think he's right. You know, especially when the polling bears out the actual election data, that's wild because that's national polling. But don't worry though, the Tories have this one covered, I think.
Their ambition is to block Conservatives winning seats and...
He's talking about reform.
...therefore put Keir Starmer into Downing Street. They've made it very clear. You've read out that statement from them. That's what Reform UK want to do. They want to see Keir Starmer in Downing Street and not have a Conservative government type.
This is a guy who got rinsed by Ferrari because he hasn't actually got a seat sorted out because all the gerrymandering the Tories are doing, which will probably be a separate video.
They're also taking votes away from the Conservatives.
No,
they're achieving that, aren't they? So you're losing votes to Reform.
I think it's very clear, as the statement from Reform said, that they're trying to block Conservatives winning seats. You're absolutely right. They want to see us lose seats. That you're absolutely right.
I think they Reform, you know, if the Tories lose, Reform will be one of the biggest beneficiaries of it because they're going to try and replace the Tory party. How successful they will be in that one, I don't know. But yeah, we cut to Rishi Sunak saying stick with our plan or something.
Circumstances of these by-elections were, of course, particularly challenging. Now, I think if you look at the results, very low turnout, and it shows that we've got work to do to show people that we are delivering on their priorities, and that's what I'm absolutely determined to do, but also shows that there isn't a huge amount of enthusiasm for the alternative in Keir Starmer and the Labour Party, and that's because they don't have a plan, and if you don't have a plan, you can't deliver real change.
I guess your plan must be trash then if the people didn't turn out for you, big man.
And when the general election comes, that's the message I'll be making to the country.
Vote for me, my plan is trash, but those guys don't have a plan, so therefore my plan is better. It's a bold strategy, Carlton. Let's see how that plays out for him. We got this from Goodall.
The Conservative Party cannot win by-elections anymore. It won the one in Uxbridge, which was, as we said on this show at the time.
So it's weird making such a bold statement and then saying, "What?" But they did win this one. It's a bit strange, that one.
Like the fact lots of people getting very excited about it. Sui generis. It was a unique set of circumstances. And of course, Conservative politicians are rightly getting extremely scared. And if I were Rishi Sunak and I were in number 10 Downing Street, the thing I would be most worried about is this. Have we got to that point in an electoral cycle, which only happens now and again in British politics? You think we've only had a few changes of party and government over the last 50 years, really. It happened in 1979, happens in 1997, happens in 2010. Have we got to that point in the electoral cycle where the electorate have made up their minds and they've just stopped listening?
It's very possible that's happened, to be honest. I think maybe people are just so sick of the Tories, they don't care what they have to say or anything. It's just they just tuned them out like white noise. And this is very scathing from outlets, and this is probably one of the benefits of leaving the BBC, because you can say mean things like this.
And the funny thing about low turnout is it's not really the argument you think it is. It's kind of like saying, I didn't get many birthday presents because actually no one turned up to my party. You see, that's why.
Which has happened to everyone on the youth.
It is, but I think it's not a mitigation.
No.
Like, you being deeply unpopular, it means people literally couldn't be bothered to leave their homes on a sort of fairly balmy February Thursday to actually go out.
And, we have postal vote as an option as well. And I think she's right there, that people, when you argue low turnout, we've seen that in the other by-elections. It wasn't necessarily that the Lib Dems did really well, is the Tory vote just collapsed, in Cheshire and Amersham and those places. It was just Tory voters just not coming out to vote. And that's going to be one of their problems, because one of the most important things you can do in politics is get the vote out, is to get your base out to come out and vote, get your normal voters to come out and vote, because that's the bare minimum you need to win a seat. So this was pretty scathing, to be honest. So that's the last one for this clip. We're going to talk about some other stuff in some other videos. That's what the rest of the tabs are for. But it was a very scathing retort, I think. Is that the right phrase? From Mattler saying, yeah, I didn't get many birthday presents. No one turned up to my birthday. So I think it's looking like it's curtains for the Tory party. I'm just worried about what comes after this. What are they going to look like once they're buried, effectively? Is it the case that Reform are going to replace them, or are they going to be replaced by some sort of Braverman type party where it's just going to be gnarly, or are they going to go back to kind of like a David Cameron type figure? But the problem is Rishi Sunak's a David Cameron type figure, and he's losing. So I don't know what happens, and it is a bit scary because, regardless of how well the Tories do in elections, they do always have a big effect on the Overton window, because they have a ton of support in the media, and it's oftentimes that people in the media give them an easy run. So the Overton window is the thing that I do fear a lot in terms of the way the Tories can kind of manipulate it. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.